Simon, just let us know, yeah, what you're working on and how we can help.
Okay, can you hear me? Is it all coming through loud and clear?
Yeah,
Yep, can you hear me?
it's very low.
Yeah, it's a little quiet. I can hear.
I'll try and do something about that as I go along.
We can't hear you either, Cor.
Oh, I muted, sorry.
Is that any better?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so yeah, I've been building out some projects using the Chrome extensions. Found them really useful, really valuable to my business. A couple of little things which just popped up along the way, and one that I'm struggling with right now is the ability to scrape the page and extract data off the page. Perhaps if I share my screen, then we can see if I can pull up what I'm doing. Just bear with me one moment. Have a look, see what we've got. Okay, can you see that screen?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the page that I want to scrape, and I want to extract this barcode value here, which remains constant. It's a template page on our e-commerce website, and I want to use that barcode then to fire off some APIs, so I can go and interrogate the data and manipulate the data and update it on the front end of the website using API calls to change the back end of the website. So what I'm trying to do is pull this barcode off, and I've sort of got this JSON data being returned here, but the UPC value here you can see is pulling it back into JSON, but there's just no value here, and I'm sort of struggling to get that. I guess I could set up a path to get that barcode value if it was there, but I can't actually seem to get it to populate. I've tried every which way but loose on setting up the attributes and the tags, etc., but I just can't seem to get it to work. So this is what I've got set up on the scrape. So I'm looking at tags and attribute search, and then the value I'm sort of assuming, we look at the page source here. So the barcode value sits here. So I don't know whether I'm doing this right, but I sort of looked at this DD class and tried to put it in around that class of attribute or tag, should I say.
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe like the HTML is changing after the fact. Instead of doing a view source, can you just do a inspect so we can just see it? Because I think the view source is what initially gets set when the page is rendered, right?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, dive into the value.
Well, we should be, yeah.
Okay, so it is still DD is the tag. Data dash product dash. Can you take me back to the action in the Bildr studio that I can take a look?
It looks
So
like it's
tag name is correct. The attribute is not class though, right? That's why.
Okay.
Well, I think you need to return we need to return the value, not the attributes, right? In this case, because
that's what it is. Yeah.
So you want to keep that, but down below where it says return method in the all attributes, yep. Take that and say, oh, actually, will it return that with this action?
I don't know.
Yeah, I tried to return the property here, and so if we look at the like here, I'm not sure this data product UPC, whether you call that part of the tag or what, but of course the class is here, and then you've got this bit of extension on this tag. I was hoping to return it based on this value, on the properties. So return a specific property. I was hoping
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
that
it's
would
not
do it.
gonna do it.
It's not gonna get
Can
it.
you try inner HTML for the property
Yeah,
or inner
that's
content?
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, say that again.
Hmm.
where you have barcode in the action where it says specific property to return.
Yeah.
First, let's if you replace that with inner HTML, so lowercase I-N-N-E-R and then uppercase HTML.
Yeah,
Oh,
all uppercase. Yep. Yep.
Let's
Like that?
try. Yeah, let's see if that returns it. If you go run it again.
Smooth something down, publish that.
I think that might do it though. I can do a test.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like I've done that before. I don't know
Mhm.
enough about this action, but I think I've done it like that before. Maybe not.
Yeah, I wonder if we shouldn't put an option, even if it does work, we
Mhm.
should put an option in there that just says return HTML value, you know,
Definitely.
and
Yeah.
Just default to that.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So there's the values there. Look, in a HTML.
So that's
That
it.
value.
Oh, that's value.
That
So
value there.
yeah, it just has an array because there's a lot of elements with that class. Because I bet you could also select that attribute. Well, maybe not because it's searching in, but
It did
you know that data attribute
Yeah, the problem was the
doesn't
data
have value.
doesn't have a value on it, so there's nothing. Yeah, we should make note of that though, Dorian. We
Yeah.
should work with OV because we could do we could also have, if the value is empty, just return anything that has that attribute, you know.
Yeah.
Attributes
Okay,
don't
at
have
least there's some values there that I can set a path up now, I guess, to extract that one bit of information.
Yeah, I think well, I was just trying to look at like how you would get it, because
Just by counting. Because I mean, if it's always the same HTML on the page, you'll know it's like the 8th item in that array. I don't know.
Yeah,
It
just
might
like,
not be 100% reliable, but it probably would be.
like .7 or something like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, well, at least the data's there now. I can start playing around with that. I just obviously couldn't get the data to start with, so I'll try and set some paths up and see if I can pull that data out.
I think that I don't know if you could be able to add nth child. It's not really an attribute. It's like a pseudo thing. It's like a style thing. I don't think that would work. I was just reading the chat.
Okay,
And
cool. Well,
you can always do like or use like regex to get rid of any of the other inner HTML values that don't start. So I'm assuming that barcode has a specific syntax. Like it most likely won't start with a letter like the SKU does.
no, generally not. Although, yeah, to be honest with you, it should always be 13-digit character, 13-digit number. The only exception is sometimes we have a D on the end, suffix on the end, but it should all
so you
basically
can-
start. You know.
Exactly. So you can do that. Like once you get this array, you can do like a path where you're only getting the values from the inner HTML. That way it just returns an array of just those values. And then you can do a match as a second path using regex to, you know, tell it to match that specific syntax.
Okay, cool. I'll try that out. I've got a couple of other questions with regards to Chrome extensions specifically. They're not as in-depth as this one, and they could be quick answers. Do you mind me going through those?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so as I said, I've built out probably about 3 Chrome extensions now, and something that I'm finding, what I've done on other Chrome extensions is I'll show you one. I can get to the page. This one. Yeah, so this one basically loads up as soon as the Chrome extension is fired. It fires off APIs to this. This is our warehouse management system software here. So it's firing off APIs in the background and bringing back all of the data from this page. So scraping the page is bringing it back through API, and then I can manipulate further data here and then publish it actually to the BigCommerce website that we're just looking at. So this is our warehouse management system what you were just looking at was our front end website. But I use this interface I built with the Chrome extension to list products on our website. What I found is that when this page loads or the Chrome extension opens, the APIs continually loop. So they're firing off the page load. And I found that it's continually looping the APIs in the background, which you don't see here because the data is populated. But when I've been doing a couple of different tests using a couple of different functions, and one in particular, which sort of highlights the issue, this one here, it basically produces me a printable barcode label, but that uses an API to go and generate the base 64 barcode. But I was getting about 3,000 API calls because someone left the label open, and because it was loading on page load, it did about 3,000 API calls to bring back the image. And I just wondered whether using the page load function, and I noticed in your last office hours you talked about nesting functions rather than on page run flow off page. So all of the APIs are based on a run flow action. Should they be a nest? Should they be nested on the page loads? They don't continually.
It shouldn't matter. Those technically what's happening whenever you do a run flow on page and when you nest is it's literally just adding that same flow to the queue again. Either way, it's actually doing the same thing.
Right.
And so I don't think that would matter. I would think if it's looping, it's one of two things probably. It's either a configuration bug where you have a loop in there somewhere that you just haven't found, or there's something unique about the extension page load that's occurring. Like maybe the extension code is like rerunning the page load for some reason. That's the only thing I could think of, because it shouldn't ever automatically rerun it either way, unless you've intentionally created a loop in your, inside of your flows, which you can do. Because we do that all the time for all kinds of looping things we need to do. Do you have the configuration on that one? It's happening on multiple extensions you've done?
Well, I found basically what happened with this little barcode extension I built was that it stopped working, and I basically hit my subscription limit on the API that I was using to generate this base 64 barcode return. And I wondered why it stopped working, and I realized I'd run out of credit. And I thought, why the hell have I run out of credit? I've only printed off a few labels. So then I realized that there was when I looked at the call graph, that there was about 3,000 calls made on a day, which I thought, well, our warehouse staff might print off 20 labels, not 3,000. So why was that? But so this particular, I've added this button now, this get label button, to actually manually force the operator to go and get the label rather than it going on page load. And it stopped. The API call is in a sensible level. So by adding a button in front of it, I sort of proved that it was the page load function that was causing the loop. And nothing different, nothing changed other than adding a button to the page.
And removing
tells
it.
me that there's not an inherent loop there, I don't think.
Yeah. Maybe we just need to test that out then, Dorian and Cora. Maybe we can create a test scenario where we can try. It shouldn't, I doubt it has anything to do with an API action. It's probably anything, if it's a bug in that code, it's probably everything,
Yeah, and I proved it also on the other one. I just showed you the listing tool that I just showed you. I made some changes to that the other day, and I was changing the visibility of a button between visible and not visible. But where I put it in the process, it was basically going visible, not visible, visible, not visible, without me doing anything. So I sort of proved to myself that it was also doing it on that Chrome extension as well. So I thought, okay, this is inherent, I think.
I wonder if there's something happening, because the way the Chrome extension works is it's loading that page into there, and then it has to it uses messages to send things back and forth from the browser to the queue inside of the Bildr page. And I'm wondering if maybe when it initiates the message system to the browser, it's automatically getting some response and kicking something off or something. something like that. It's a whole different, it's like another layer of ability to execute actions is occurring inside of that Chrome extension. But we'll test it out and see if we can find it, because I bet you just don't, like, it's probably happening everywhere else, every other time too, like on every Chrome extension that's being exported, but you just don't notice it because it's not doing anything that you would see, you know, or that you
Yeah.
would find.
But
But
exactly,
we'll-
it's only this API call log that alerted me to the issue.
yeah,
And it wasn't massive amounts of money. It's like I only put 20 quid credit on or something. I wasn't going to use it very much.
yeah.
But I busted it, and I thought, oh wow, okay, well, how's that?
And out of curiosity, what does that API do? It generates that barcode for you?
Yeah, it returns back the image, this barcode image. I do an API call to this page, pick up the barcode value and the SKU value and the title. But this particular API goes off and generates the barcode based on the numeric value of the barcode, returns the barcode image in the base64 file, which I then populate here, and then we can download it as a printable label. Just a small label for use in our warehouse.
Do we still have, don't we have a barcode action, Dorian? Don't we have an action that will generate a barcode?
I don't know. I know in like previous Bildr version we do. I don't
Yeah,
know.
we used to have one where it'll just take any value that, you know, any numeric value you give it, and it'll, because it's a font, you know, like you can.
Oh, what, like 3 of 9 font or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously this is a code 128 barcode, which is a sort of symbology and barcode language. But as long as it can take the characters, it doesn't really matter what symbology it is.
Yeah. I wonder, I'm gonna make a note to look for that, because I think we have one. Then you don't need an API.
I just searched, I didn't see one, but it's probably maybe
Yeah,
has
it's
some
in the
JavaScript
previous
for it.
version because I use it for some of our previous or older projects.
Useful it was in there, but hey, not a game changer. So that was one question. So there's a little loop investigation there if you've got half a minute. So the other thing, which I was struggling with a little bit, was part of the listing. So if you look at, on the listing tool, this here, I've got an image uploader here, which will then replace the image on the website. I've just quickly put an image uploader on this one, so I can just show you what sort of happens. So BigCommerce, the e-commerce platform that we use, requires me to upload the image URL in order for it to transpose onto the website. And on the value return on the image uploader, I get this, if you like, document path, which is the value that's returned from the element. I've sort of assumed that the full URL will be this, but it isn't really. I think from my limited knowledge, is it blob or something where it goes? It's stored in the blob. Is that a memory thing or something? Or this?
Yeah, that's a document uploaded by, that's a user document. So basically what's happening is it's probably inaccessible from outside of the app because of permission settings, right, Dorian?
Yeah, it creates a token to access those because they're not public.
Right. We can we actually have a task for ourselves in a future release cycle to put a toggle on documents so that you can turn them into public documents so that they can be accessible outside of the app, because there's really no reason like that. That's perfectly fine to be public. You have no reason, like you don't care if it's, it's going to go up on a website anyways, right? But that toggle doesn't exist. But if you send us Dorian, maybe you should be telling what you need. But if you send us some information about your project, like your project ID, we can go make the container public for you, and then it'll just start working. So it's just not working because when it goes to try to get it, it goes, you're trying to get this from outside and we're protecting it, you know?
Yeah, so this, using that file path that I just sort of copied here,
Mm.
if you type that into the browser, it brings back this
Yep.
long URL. So when I was trying to upload this file path to my website, the website was kicking it back, saying it wasn't a valid image.
And when it goes, correct me if I'm wrong, Dorian, but if we make that container public, you can still use that link that you generated there, the slash document slash link. It's
Yeah.
just that right now, because it's a private thing, the only way that our backend will return the CDN file path, it does basically a redirect to that file path.
Right.
And the only way we allow it to happen, because it's right now the whole container is flagged as private, it'll only occur if it's coming from your app, right? And so
Right.
by making it public, you should still be able to use that link, so you can send exactly what you're sending now. But it'll just start working on the other side, because then our backend will go, no, we're good to, this is public, so yeah, let them have it.
Yeah, because they won't require the auth token anymore. Because we generate a temporary one
You guys,
for that
what do you
session.
need from Simon?
Just the project name from the studio URL.
Okay, cool. Simon, could you chat that over to Dorian in Discord? You can do it through a private DM.
Yeah.
Dorian, are your DMs open?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And if it's okay, we're about half time, and I know we've got a few more people that need some questions answered. So Simon, are you good with some stuff to move on, and then we'll go investigate that looping and see if we can repeat?
One very quick one, which I think might be
Okay, very quickly. Mhm.
Okay, so the Chrome extensions that I built are periodically deleted from my browser.
We can't hear you, Simon. Can you start over?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So the Chrome extensions that I built are periodically deleted by my Chrome browser. I just want
It's going in and out. I don't know what happened to the mic.
Can you hear me?
Barely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very low.
Perfectly still.
Don't move.
Okay, so my Chrome extensions are being deleted by Chrome.
Oh,
Your Chrome
man.
extensions are being deleted by Chrome.
Yeah, they just literally disappear. I have to reinstall them.
Okay, are they giving you a reason? Have you gone through the approval process with them?
Well, I'm using the developer mode.
Just on the browser?
Yeah, just the browser.
Have we heard this? I feel like I've heard this before. Like there's this setting or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it sounds like more of a security setting where they like clear those out every once in a while, or I don't know. That mine, I have a few that I use, just in developer mode internally, they stay forever. They've all stayed.
Okay.
You aren't using like a is there anything that what's this? There's a special high level security version of Chrome or specific setting on accounts with Chrome. I can't remember what it's called. And I know they do a lot of things when you have those turned on, it'll do a lot of things like that where it'll just automatically delete. Like it just doesn't allow Chrome to operate the same. Maybe it's something like that automatically doing it. But I don't think it would be from us. It would be something like in Chrome, or if you're signed in with Google in your browser, like the security settings of the account could be causing that, I can't remember. There's like a high level security setting, like a really, it's just like, I want the most intense security you can offer me, Google setting. I can't remember what it's called. And with that on, I've heard of all kinds of things like this that'll occur because Google's just trying to protect you from everything, basically.
Okay. And I'll do a search to see if I can find that being reported before, and if there was any sort of resolution to that. And if so, I'll chat that to you, Simon. Okay. So next up, it looks like Cracka has a question, or you need help with something in OpenSea. Are you-
Yes, what's up? you hear me?
Hey, yes, we can.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna share my screen. So yeah, I've been working on this like the OpenSea extension for just just to like get my Builder kind of credentials up. Let me just see. Can you guys see this?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I think I pretty much got all the way till, well, pretty much I'll show you what I got right here. So basically I have the extension like pretty laid out like how I want it to. Connects your MetaMask, loads up the assets, but I can't get it to show the last price or the floor price. So yeah, I think there's something wrong with this like API call
They
here.
just OpenSea just changed their API, so when you're trying to get last price, they're using their new like open source system. I forget what it's called. So like this just happened, and some of the stuff I had in production, just the prices started breaking, and I had to go in, and it's just a different response. It just comes back a little differently. So you can go to OpenSea's API documentation and find what you need to change, but you just have to change the path basically.
So I can still use the same API call for the get
I
assets.
think so.
or
Yeah.
the
If I
get retrieve. Or yeah, retrieve assets, or is
Yeah.
it like a secondary call that I have to do?
I think
Like
they also,
double call or something.
I don't know if they still do this, but they used to have floor price in a couple of places in their API, and
Yeah.
it would return 0 every time, even though
Yeah, I was gonna say that was the next thing. Floor price you can only get from the collections endpoint, but the first thing you should be able to use the same endpoint and get it.
well, I think he's using retrieve assets on the first one. So I think he has to do a second call for the
For the
collection.
floor price.
Just
Yeah.
for
Okay, yes. So I could just
Yeah.
add another action, which would be the API call. How does
Yep.
that like get set into the grid list again? I can just do multiple API calls in the same grid list.
Well, in this case, because you're you're like in a collection row, right? And so and this is for the floor price, right? Not for the last price.
Oh yeah, they're two separate places you'll do these, I see.
Yeah. So like
Okay, I see.
in the collection row, you'll do one API call to that. If you go back to the endpoints on OpenSea, the retrieve assets tab you have open up there.
Sure.
I think it's the collection model one, or retrieve collections, sorry, on the left.
Yeah,
Retrieve
you gotta go.
collection.
Right here.
They changed this since last time I looked. I think it's actually, they have retrieve collection stats now too.
That's the one you need.
Yeah.
The stats.
I think
Stats
it's
is
Stats.
the
Okay.
floor price.
So if you run against this one,
So I would have to give it the parameter for the slug for each collection.
yep.
Just
So
to
you'll
get
have
the-
to run it on each row. Yeah. And so that page you were on, you'll just add one.
But
Go ahead, Drew.
I was gonna say like you'll make an API call to retrieve the assets first, and you'll get the slug.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So where
And
you're
the slug will be set in the grid list, right?
Am I frozen? Am I behind?
yeah, you're behind, but it's cool. If you go to the collection row page. Yeah, on that
Collection
page.
row. Okay.
Yep. And go to on the get assets for collection flow.
Sure.
And where you're doing the set value, you're returning the assets there, right? Like that's just taking the response and setting it into the grid for the assets. Okay, cool. Just want to
Yeah.
make sure what's going on there. So if you go back to the API call,
Sure.
and then scroll down a little bit, I think you already have the slug in here, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just right here. So you'll do another API call to the other endpoint, and you'll run the collection from the slug, same type of thing, but just to that other endpoint, and it's going to return a different set of information for the collection stats. And then you'll have another set element value action to set the floor price only from the response of the second API call. So you just do another one like a whole.
So just
and
It wouldn't be
same as
here
this,
though.
basically.
You would want to put that second API call on the page load of this form for the floor price. Because this
Oh.
action's only being called when you click on it to expand and show the assets.
Got it. Yeah. So Dorian's right there. Definitely you'd want to put, you'd have one flow for getting the assets and either another flow for getting the floor price, or just put the actions inside the page load itself.
The page load as in the
Yeah, so if you go
collection
to
row.
this page, click on this collection row page,
Okay,
and then go to the page load flow.
page load.
So, and probably inside the binding, open that binding one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what exactly is page bindings?
Yeah, so the way that it works when this page loads, so like in your case, you're gonna have the collection row. That's in a grid, right? So there might be like 5 collections returned, and
Okay.
each one of those rows opens this page that you have here called collection row. And when it opens that page, it runs all the actions inside the page load flow. And in this case, the page binding flow is also nested inside of the page load flow. So you could
I
put
see.
your API actions could go inside of the page load flow, or they could go inside of page binding because that's nested inside of the page load flow. And because that's going to automatically run every time the page loads, just automatically execute, and it'll be able to set the floor price from there. So basically either
Oh, I see.
page load or in the page binding, you'll create one API call action to get the collection stats, and we'll put another set element value after that to take whatever the stats returned are. Well, I don't know what that response looks like. It'll be like, dot floor price or something, a path to get it or something like that.
I think
probably.
it's just floor price. I think it was just a straight object, but we'd have
Is
to
it
go
set
back.
value?
Yeah, you'll use the set value and make sure there's a weight between those two. So the API call will have that value will weight. And then on the element, you'll select the floor price display element. Yep.
Okay. I see. So
Set-
is there like, sorry.
Just for the floor price by itself rather than for the get assets.
Okay. So is there like a reason, like, for categorizing, is there a difference if I put it in page binding or page load?
No, there's technically no, the only reason it works for both, the reason it works in this case is because page binding is already nested inside of page load. So technically, like, you could go make a new flow called get floor price, put the actions inside of that, and then nest that get floor price flow inside of the page load. They're all just flows and actions. And so depending on how
I think there is like a little, the difference, or like the reason they're separate though, just so to make sense of it. Page binding is like, that runs all the purple binding tabs on each element. So if you're like binding data from Bildr collection, so you sometimes need to run page binding later, like maybe some other action updates and you want to run page binding. So the way I think of it is, page load is if I want something to happen once and only once. Page binding is like all the things that happen to set up a page and I might want to run them again, but it really doesn't matter.
Oh, I see. So does the page load first, or is it page binding first call, or
Page load is
action
called
wise?
first, and page load by default, the only thing it does is call page binding, but page load is first. And so inside of page load, you can put actions above the nested page binding or below the nested page binding, and it'll do
I
them in
see.
order. Yeah.
Okay. That's kind of okay. That's good to know. So my other question is I wanted to use the Alchemy SDK. I think Web3 Doc, he kind of mentioned something about using the run JavaScript block. How would I go about using like a SDK within Bildr itself? Because yeah.
Do you know what it looks like? Do you have the documentation handy for it?
I have just like some here. Yeah, let's start from the beginning here. Yeah, so I know that you can just add this here, but I'm not quite sure how to set up the API keys that it generates? Would I just make a secret and then do it that way, or?
Is it you have API key values, or do you need to like generate them on the fly?
Yeah, so it's like it generates them within the API or the the Alchemy site, right? Whatever they use to generate. You gotta like run their little like app or whatever it is.
Oh, but you can still just paste them somewhere and they're always the same. When you use them, they're always the same, right?
Yeah, until like you decide to change it or whatever, get a new key or something. Yeah.
I mean, in that case, like what you were looking at is actually the settings for the API action, and you wouldn't even need to use their SDK.
Oh, so
but there's like two
API?
methods. Yeah, like all the SDKs are is they just wrap up API calls. Like you can pretty much usually do everything in an SDK manually, which is using like an API action. So I don't know if you'll want to use their SDK for other reasons, but for what we just looked at, that's the API URL endpoint, and
okay. So yeah, because like I don't know, sometimes the documentation isn't really like, because this is the REST API, correct? Like that type of call.
That's what it would be. Yeah, like when you see that curl, and the other thing we were just looking at where it said curl, CURL. That's it's not exactly the same thing technically, but you can basically translate that into a REST API call usually. It's like that. The -H is the headers, -D is the body. So those are just like the JSON key value pairs.
Oh, okay. So I could literally just post this in the header, same as I did with the OpenSea API, and use the secret for the API key.
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So I don't even need to do this, like the npm, all that kind of stuff is like more for like command line code.
Yeah, and you can't do npm in the front end, in like the browser actions of Bildr. You could actually basically use npm in a similar way to this if you do a server-side action, but it's a whole different process. So what you do normally, if you see something that needs npm, you have to actually find that script, put it in a custom page header, and then that's where it comes in with that run JavaScript function. So if you have the script in a page header, you can manually run all the JavaScript. But I don't think in this case you'll need to do that. So.
Oh, that's what he was talking about then?
Yeah.
Like I would have to just run the like, is it a page or is it an element for the run JavaScript function?
It goes in the header. Yeah, so there's two steps. There's one that's a page header. On the left-hand side, there's like greater than, less than sign, like code brackets. So that's where you add a page header, which will just put any code into the head tag of your HTML. And the code you put in there is a link to their library, to their script. So it's npm does that all automatically for you. And so the way you do it through here is you have to actually go find the link to their script, which usually you can. I have like run into it like once or twice where I just couldn't find the script anywhere, but usually you can find them.
Yeah, that's the problem with these APIs is just that they update them to make it so like you have to, like, not you have to, but it's like hard to find the REST API, like URLs, endpoints, and all that stuff, and the documentation just doesn't, match sometimes. So,
they're trying to make it easy, but they make it a little trickier.
Yeah. They almost never match. You always have to do them a little bit different.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and Web3 DevDoc mentioned that you could probably use their SDK using like a CDN hosted file method, because then you can just pop that in as a page header.
What is a CDN? Like, I'm not familiar with that type of.
It's basically just there's all these libraries. So if you use an SDK, you're using someone else's JavaScript library. There's like an actual JavaScript file or files that are the library. The CDN is a link to them. There's like, a permanent-ish link that's always available for them. So if you can find the CDN link, you can include it in your code. Sorry, my kid's going nuts.
Nice.
But yeah, I think that's basically it. You can include a link to the JavaScript versus when you run npm, it pulls in all those JavaScript files.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so you could just put that CDN link in the header?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you put it in like a script tag and you say src equals and put the CDN link. But usually they'll just have you copy paste that whole code block. Yeah.
Oh, but he's saying it's on GitHub. Okay, cool. I didn't know that. I haven't really looked into Alchemy. I've been using the Morales you know, stuff a little bit, and I think Alchemy is a little bit more tailored for Ethereum.
Oh, nice.
Just see Web3 Dev Docs last chat there for his plugin.
Nice.
Oh wow.
There you go. That's the way to go.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, well, thanks again, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you for letting us help out with that. And then Web3 Dev Doc, for sure, let us know when you've got that ready, because it sounds like you may have someone who could use it. Okay, so let me see here. What else did we have? Did someone else? Sev, it looks like you needed some help with something. With an OAuth flow with Asana. Are you on the call? Actually, I think they are no longer on the call. Let me see, where's that list? Okay, no, they are not. So in that case, did I miss anything? Does anyone have anything they need to ask? If not, we can go to the list that I had.
And we could probably answer, I mean, what Sev is asking for there.
Yeah.
Because basically there's an OAuth flow back and forth, and I think my interpretation of that is there's a URL that comes back to a Bildr page, and it has some values in the URL, like question mark, you know, name equals Bob or whatever it is. And he's asking, how do I get Bob out of the URL inside the Bildr page? I'm thinking, is that how y'all interpreted that, Dorian and Drew?
Yeah, that's what I was heading towards.
Yeah, maybe Dorian, the same way we do it with Stripe, probably. It's probably a similar flow back and forth, right? In terms of like, we send it over there, there's like an auth process, there's a back and forth, and it comes back to a Bildr page with that, and then you're interpreting those values.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the key thing would be to just look at their docs to see what their response looks like for the initial call. Because typically that's going to send back some sort of token and some property in JSON. And once you understand what the response looks like, then you can use a path to get that specific value that you need for the second call that now sends the token with the request. But yeah, without looking at the docs or looking at the exact scenario, I wouldn't really know.
It seems like that this might even be a simpler question of like, how do you pull a value out of the URL though, right? That's how I read it. Like in general, and then they handle it. They just can't physically pull it out of the URL, which is like, it's tricky if you don't know how, so.
Yeah, I can probably maybe show my screen on how to do that.
Yeah, because I think the variable defaults to API response or something like that.
Well, I mean, it's just like just in general, the way to use a value from a URL, you know?
Yeah, with the request input type.
Two different things. It just depends on how, like, if it's I think, Dorian, what you were referring to is like, you know, there's actually, you're like pulling JSON out of a response from an API call.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what he's saying is he's past that. He's like redirected back to a Bildr page, and he just needs to pull stuff out of the URL itself.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Just from like a query string or or a segment. Yeah.
And I'll just make a test flow here and a test action. And all I'm going to do is just I'll just set a variable, and I'm going to pull the data from a URL that I know is going to have a certain value in it. And so basically what I want to do is I'll set this variable, and I'll just say, you know, my variable name is just test. And the trick here is that inside of Bildr, you can get values out of the URL directly by using this request. And this is actually something that Drew and I and one of our developers were going back and forth on some things to solve for some other like edge case issues here, but this should work for your use case of that. Basically, I would assume it's going to be query string. Usually the way those values come back is it's like
Mark.
question.
Fraser did add a link that Sev had chatted in the Discord, I think, to the docs for Asana. I don't know if you want,
I'm looking through. You could probably keep going, Mark, and I'll
Okay.
tell you. I'm gonna find out what it is.
I actually I went to those docs just a minute ago while Dorian was talking. Let me go see how the OAuth works. But I didn't get to, I didn't get into it. But yeah, so just pulling it directly out of if you're needing to just pull something in general out of the URL, this may or may not have anything to do with OAuth with Asana, right? You're just pulling something out of the URL. Usually the way it works is it's a query string, and what you'll see in the URL is like, you can actually see it in the Bildr one. There's a question mark, and then project name, and then that equals this value. Why is my mouse going crazy? It's like wanting to define everything. But it's this question mark, everything that's after that is what's called a query string parameter. So like project name is a parameter, and the value of that parameter is this. So inside of any URL, you can just pull that information in. So if the query string, if I'm trying to get the value of that project name and I put it like this, the variable that gets set here would be called test, and the value in this case would be this value right here. So if you're wanting to pull, like, let's say the response on something, or you open a Bildr page with that information and it was some information in a query string parameter, you can just access that by changing the type to request, go to query string, and just enter the name of that parameter, and it's going to return that value for you. So in general, I use this all the time for all kinds of things. Like you could use it for another similar or normal use cases like referral codes, right? It's like if you give people referral links and they come to your app, you can read that referral link and like store it when the new user signs up. You can store the referral code with the user to give credit to the person who had it. So you'll have like question mark referral equals ABCDEFG or whatever it is, and then that way it's a unique thing for the user who referred them. So it's a kind of a common use case for this. We're gonna add
Asana is the query string. That's all I was gonna say. Just double checked.
iPhone 12 Pro has a question in the chat.
Yeah, this is actually an action that well, you can like modify the URL with actions because JavaScript can update that. But we have some actions that do that, where you can set what's called the history. But it's a little confusing the way it's set up now. So we're actually adding some things and changing these. But you can basically push things out to it. And I don't even really want to dive into this because I'm about to like write docs on this new one that we have. But that's how I would probably go about doing that. You can just push anything you want into it. But the real use of doing that is to create like single page apps where you can do this like back and forward flow and things. With query string parameters, you can include like search history and things like that. And actually Drew does that on bildr.com/actions on this site. This is a page built by Drew. It's like if I begin typing, you can see it's actually putting in Q equals up here. And the reason for that is if I wanted to copy this and send it to someone, I can just send it to them, they paste it, and when they hit enter, it's going to automatically do it. So it's going both ways. Use that action to set this in real time, and then you have on page load an action that reads this and sets the value into the search and then loads the grid with the search value in place, or probably the other way around. But yeah, I don't know if you want to add something to that, Drew, but we don't really have good docs on that action yet, but we need to get them in there for this stuff.
Yeah, I don't think I'd add anything specific. That was a good example I didn't even remember existed. But the other way I would say maybe to add a query parameter is if you link somewhere, you just type it. Because normally you might not always just need to change on the fly. If you need to use it in a URL, you just type the URL with question mark, and then it's key equals value.
And there's actually this thing after route text. If you use this action called open page into browser, you can open a page from your project and type in whatever you want. So like I could just type in something here like that, and it would just be now part of that URL when it goes out. I can also change this to concatenate and do something pretty complicated, you know, like I could make a whole series of things out of it to concatenate a value together to be part of that. So then it would open up /app with all the information that I want defaulted into it. And then the same thing with the open URL action. You could just basically string together, concatenate together a URL however you want, and that would get you the same result.
All right, hopefully that will help Sev when we do the replay. Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions or anything else that they want to go through? Let me see. I think Biggiebee had something. Maybe we could go through it. So would be great if you guys can show how to make a div show up by hovering on another div using Bildr CSS, kind of like how a submenu works in a nav menu bar. Is
Yeah,
that something?
Yeah, and I actually have that in this little app that I'm building.
Yeah.
We could, there's like a general thought or general kind of way to go about doing these things, or maybe 10 different general ways, I guess. So if you want to do something on mouse enter, you're either doing that with just straight CSS, where you're doing things like on hover in the CSS, you just set it to do different CSS, like show the things outside of it is called overflow, and you either do hidden or visible. So you can do it with CSS, or you can do it with actions and JavaScript. So maybe we can look at, I think I actually have both ways in here. So this is a little list row that actually lives in a grid right here. And you can see there's this thing that's like off to the side. So it's just like hidden off to the side. So this is, you can actually kind of like imagine this row is right there. And because of the overflow settings that I have inside of this, you can't see that on the other side. So in this case, what I do is on mouse enter of the outer element, I have mouse enter and I have mouse leave events on there. These come by default on all divs that you drop onto your project. So on enter, I'm running this flow called menu outer show. And I'm literally just setting a style property called right. You know, it's just like the right position of it. And it just changes that CSS style property. So when you put your mouse into it, so this is using JavaScript to do that work. You could also, instead of like changing a style property like this, you could also add or remove a style class from an element to make it visible or not visible. So you can use JavaScript actions to do that, like what I'm doing here. Or you can also do, I believe in here, there are like this container left icons is inside of this outer element, but you can't see them there. It's actually like they're right here on this left side, but you can't see it because of the CSS. And so if I look at the CSS of this item row, if I scroll down here, there's a setting called overflow in CSS. And this has overflow of hidden. And then on hover, I have overflow of visible selected. So what happens is that element is always positioned over here, but you cannot see it until you put your mouse in here. And I don't even know if you'll be able to, because of the, yeah, you can kind of see it pop in and out there to the left of it. It's like light colored, but let's see here. I can move it like here. So you can see it do that, right? So that's just straight CSS doing it. There's no actions running. There's nothing like that happening. It's just CSS causing that to occur. And I almost always use a combination of those in my apps. Sometimes I'll use actions to do it. Sometimes I'll use just CSS. It kind of depends on what I'm doing. Like this one, I'm actually using CSS as well. And I get fairly fancy with some of these things. Like this one's doing the same thing where it's showing these below it. But in addition to that, you can see I have this box, you can see this div here. It's hidden. It's not really hidden. It's just like it's just transparent. The reason I have this is because when I have my mouse anywhere on inside of that block, it counts as being inside of the first div that I entered when I put my mouse in, which means that the hover state of this is going to have, well, in this case, it's opacity 1. But it basically that way I can basically allow the user to kind of move at a diagonal here and stay within it, and their mouse never leaves it, which means that then it doesn't trigger the hiding of these icons down here. Because you can kind of think of it like, if I hovered this and I force them to only go straight down, their natural mouse movement is probably not going to be straight down. They're probably going to go to some angle like this. So I always like play around with the shape of that div and how I want it to be, because it's overlapping an input too. So you can't just make it like 100%, because then you're sitting on top of the input all the time. So there's some tricks like that you can use for this hide show that just give a little bit of extra niceness to the user for how they're going to use it. But so those are the two methods. One is using a state on the style class, the hover state. So overflow hidden and visible, swapping between those. And then the other way is on mouse enter of any element, you can trigger an action or a flow that has actions in it that hide, show, or can do anything. And I'll use combinations of those throughout all these different apps. Hope that answers it.
I hope that answers it too. We'll find out when we send the replay. All right, everyone. So we're at time. So we'll go ahead and call today's session. We do this every week, so join us next week. And as always, if there's anything we didn't get to, chat in the Discord. And then Simon will get back to you when we try and repeat the looping thing. And if I sent some links for the Chrome stuff, so hopefully we can get that figured out too. Thank you everyone for joining in and making it a good session, and hope to see you next week, and that you have a great rest of your week and weekend. Bye.